Hi, welcome to the Basics of Veterans Administration Benefits. My name is Michael Amoruso. Today I'm going to give you a quick snippet as to what the basics of VA benefits are all about. I want to encourage you to join the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And when you do, you'll have access not only to an incredible community out there of elder law attorneys and special needs attorneys, but our online virtual library. And what I'm going to introduce you to today, if you jump onto that online library, you will notice that there is a 3-hour course devoted solely to Veterans Administration benefits, taught by Valerie Peterson and Dawn Weekly. I encourage you to listen to that webinar and learn in detail some of the concepts that I'll be talking about today. Now, I've got to tell you, adding Veterans Administration benefits to your practice is an exciting opportunity. It's a niche market. There are some out there that can practice solely in the Veterans Administration arena, but a good number of us add this as an ancillary to our practice, and it's fantastic. And here's why. Take a look at some of these numbers that you see on the screen. In the United States, we've got over 24 million veterans. Over the age of 65, there are 10 million. And World War II veterans, there are 3 million. That is a large client base that needs to be serviced. So now, what are some of these benefits and why are they important? Well, let me tell you why. Public benefits out there, Medicaid in particular, may be insufficient to provide the necessary home care for an individual. What Veterans Administration benefits can do is actually bring cash into the household so that they can pay for home care services. So it is a great way to keep a loved one at home. It's another great way to help pay for assisted living costs. But I think the most important thing, our veterans are heroes. And these heroes feel like they've earned this benefit. And not just feel like it, we know they've earned it. So let's do all we can to make sure they get the benefits that they deserve. Now, in a nutshell, there are two types of benefits. One is VA compensation, and one is VA pension. Now, let me just try to clarify the distinction between the two. Let's start with the compensation. Compensation is a disability that's resulting from service. So it's a service-related disability. These disabilities often have ratings, anywhere in increments from 10 up to 100%. And this is required in order to receive the compensation benefits. Because this is tied to the service-related disability, there is no means testing, so there are no income or asset thresholds that need to be met in order to qualify for these benefits. And they are available for the surviving spouse and dependents as well. Now, so that you can understand what veterans VA compensation is truly about, I want you to think about something you may often see in your own practices today, and that's workers' compensation. This is the Veterans Administration's parallel to what we may be used to on workers' comp. So if you get disabled on the job, you're entitled to compensation. Same thing here with veterans' compensation. One thing you're going to spend more time on in your practice is the other benefit, and that's Veterans Administration pension. These benefits are available for non-service related injuries. They're available to the veterans and to the spouse of veterans, and there can be enhancements if you have other dependents in the household as well. However, this type of benefit is means tested. There are income requirements and asset requirements. And if you're under those thresholds, then you can be eligible, assuming other factors that we'll talk about in a few moments. Unlike the Medicaid program, the Veterans Pension Program is payable directly to the individual. So the individual will be receiving cash. They will take that cash and apply it for their care. Contrast that to Medicaid, where if you're eligible for Medicaid, Medicaid pays directly to the providers. So that's just a distinction between the two types of public benefits. Take a look at the screen here. You'll see numbers that reflect the range of veterans' pension benefits that are available, anywhere from the service pension to the housebound pension to aid and attendance. And we'll talk about these three briefly in a moment. But you can see that the maximum annual pension rate can range anywhere from $12,000 a year all the way up to $24,000 plus a year, depending on dependents. On a monthly basis, you're looking at just over $1,000 a month, all the way up to over $2,000 a month, depending on the pension that you were eligible for. So if you do require the aid and attendance and can get over $2,000 a month, that'll go a long way in many parts of this country to meeting the home care needs of an individual on a monthly basis. These pension rates, as I said earlier, also have survivor benefits. So the spouse that survives can have a death benefit that ranges from $8,200 a year all the way up to aid and attendance of over $13,000 a year. So take a look at these numbers. I encourage you to go onto the Veterans Administration website, the NALO website, or just write these numbers down so that you have them available for you when you get that call regarding pension rates and availability of benefits. Now, before we can even access the cash on the pension side, there are some criteria. Number one is a service component. In order to be eligible for any of these three benefits, you have got to have served at least one day in wartime service. If the veteran is deceased, then as long as that veteran served one day, then the spouse will be eligible, meet that first threshold to access the pension benefits. But it's not just one day of service. Actual service has got to be the following. If you served in active duty prior to September 7th, 1980, then you had to have served a continuous period of 90 days of active duty. If you served after September 7th of 1980, then you needed a continuous period of 24 months to start to access these services. The third prong here for eligibility on the service side is that your discharge must have been anything other than a dishonorable discharge. So, one day of wartime duty, actual service depending on when your active duty occurred, before or after September 7th of 1980, and three, any discharge other than a dishonorable discharge. Now, as we briefly spoke before, there are three classifications of pensions. There's the basic pension, there's the housebound pension, and there's aid and attendance. The basic pension provides an allowance for any individual, any veteran that met those service requirements over the age of 65. So there's this presumption of disability over the age of 65. If you're under the age of 65, it requires that disability rating we talked about earlier of 100%. That's for the basic pension. The housebound pension, which gets you a slightly enhanced monthly benefit, you can see here on the screen, over $1,500 for a veteran with one dependent, versus the $1,300 for the basic pension. So as the needs increase, so does the availability of the cash benefit each month. But how do you qualify for this? Well, you've got to be rated 100% disabled and have a second disability that is rated at 60%. There is a court case out there, however, the Hartness versus Nicholson case back in 2006. You'll see it in the materials. What that case did was interpret this 100% and 60% rating a bit differently. The court held there that the combined disability rating needs to be 60%. Now, housebound is a misnomer in my opinion. It doesn't mean that you cannot leave the house. What housebound is truly about is that the veteran cannot leave the house to earn an income. So if that threshold is met, the veteran cannot leave to earn an income, then the veteran can be considered housebound and begin to access the higher pension. Now, for those of us that have active elder law practices, I think the third benefit is the one you're going to find more often, or at least try to qualify your client for, and that is aid and attendance. Just look at the number on the screen. The benefit has now increased to over $2,000 a month with one dependent. But it's a higher criteria in order to qualify for this. So let's look at the definition. There is a presumption that you require aid and attendance benefits if you are blind or reside in a nursing home. If you're not blind and don't reside in a nursing home, the other criteria are you cannot perform 2 out of 5 activities of daily living. For those of you that don't understand the term of activities of daily living, it's not going to the movies, going shopping. No, it's simple tasks. Eating, dressing, bathing, toileting, transferring in and out of a bed, transferring in and out of a chair. The other criteria that would be considered for aid and attendance is lack of capacity, mental or physical capacity. And third is if you're bedridden. So if you meet those criteria, your client may in fact be eligible for aid and attendance. Now, that gets you through the service components. It gets you through which level you are entitled to based on the disability. Now we've got to determine the means test, whether or not you qualify in the income side and the asset side to access this benefit. So I want you to look at the formula you see on the screen. Gross household income, and that includes the veteran's income, the dependent spouse, and any dependent children's income. So anyone in that household, all of their income is considered the gross household income. We subtract out of that out-of-pocket medical expenses. And what you're left with is income for VA purposes. So for the rest of this tape, I'm going to refer to this as the IVAP, income for VA purposes. Now, how does the VA calculate this? Well, from the date you file, they look prospectively at your annualized income for the next 12 months. They allow you to exclude certain items, and these are the items when you're meeting with a client you need to maximize as much as possible. Make sure you capture every expense, even those de minimis expenses that the client may think are not relevant to medical expenses. So listen to the 3-hour course on the NAILA Virtual Online Library that I told you about. There is a tremendous list available there that can help you guide your clients to accumulating these expenses that are in fact deductible from the income. So we have unreimbursed medical expenses. And now these are expenses that were paid and will be paid in the future. So not just what's currently due this month. You need to ask your clients, what have you paid and what will you pay as well? And this is for the veteran, the spouse, and also household members. Now, for those future expenses, they must be clear and reasonable. Let me give you a few examples. Well, if there's a nursing home expense, remember, one of the presumed criteria for aid and attendance is if the individual resides in a nursing home. Well, nursing home costs, that's clear and reasonable. Assisted living costs, in-home healthcare costs. But don't stop there. Now you've got Medicare Part B premiums, you've got Medicare Part D premiums, supplemental insurance premiums, incontinency supplies, diapers. Don't forget, those are expenses. Prescription copays. You need to start going through the list with the client that you'll gather from the other course on the NAILA Virtual Library and help that client get itemized each and every one of these expenses. And this is a very important exercise, and now let's help you understand why. The maximum annual pension rate. This is the maximum amount that can be paid depending on income and the need of a claimant. Okay? Now, so here's an example. The maximum annual pension rate for a married veteran seeking aid and attendance, go back to that chart you saw a few slides ago, $24,238 per year. That's your maximum annual pension rate for aid and attendance with one dependent. So here's a question. If after going through the calculation with all your clients, of every itemized expense, and you find out that their income after those deductions is $24,239, is that individual eligible for aid and attendance benefits? The answer is no. The VA will not pay anything if the IVAP is greater than the maximum annual pension rate. That there, my friends, is why it is so important that you take the time to itemize all of the expenses that can be deducted from the income. Okay, that's the income side of the means test. For those of you that do Medicaid as well, you know there's a resource or an asset side. So let's talk about this also. You cannot receive any benefits if the corpus of that veteran's estate is such that under all the circumstances, considering the income that's already available, that IVAP, and there's reasonable assets that can be utilized to make up a shortfall for the cost of care on a monthly basis. So there used to be this $80,000, $50,000 standard. Well, let me tell you something loud and clear. That is not a viable standard. There is no standard out there that says that if you're married and have $80,000 of assets or under, you meet the asset test. And there's no standard that says that if you have $50,000 or under, you meet the asset test for eligibility. What the VA actually does is they compare the net worth of the individual with the VA life expectancy and current shortfall. All right, let's see if you can understand this. If the income is $100 short of the cost of care each month, but the individual has assets that if you spread those assets over the life expectancy, it will meet that $100 shortfall and the money will not run out, then the person is not eligible on the asset side. The way you become eligible on the asset side is if the assets would run out, meeting that shortfall prior to the VA life expectancy. Now, this is done on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so there is no bright line rule. Now, here are some key distinctions between VA benefits and Medicaid planning. On the VA benefit side, there is no look-back period. There are no penalty periods as of date with regard to applying for VA benefits. Now, there is an exception. Remember, on the IVAP calculation, it includes all of the income of the individuals in the household as well as on the asset side. So if there are gifts being made to family members that reside in the household, that's not going to do any good purpose for VA planning, while it may do some good on the Medicaid side. So you need to be very careful on the interplay between VA benefits and Medicaid planning. Another area where this often disintersects is with regard to trusts. Income being paid out of a trust may be acceptable on the Medicaid side. However, what's going to happen on the VA side? It's going to increase the IVAP, right? Okay. The VA in 2008 also introduced an accreditation requirement. The attorneys must be accredited with the VA prior to preparing and presenting and prosecuting claims. So there is a form. Okay, you'll see the reference to the form in the materials. Go onto the VA website. You'll see that in a few moments as well. Get that form filed, and now you can prepare, present, and prosecute claims before the VA. So here's the website. You can see it on the screen, www.va.gov/VA forms. You'll see a Form 21A. Get that in, and now you can start preparing. Now, this is where NAILA does a great service to its members. There are many attorneys out there that may submit these forms to be accredited by the VA, but then within 1 year of that accreditation, you've got to take a 3-hour course. And that is the course that I was referring to earlier. It is now available in the NAILA Virtual Education Library. Listen to it. Valerie Peterson and Dawn Weekly do a fantastic job guiding you through this 3-hour course. And trust me, you will know what you're talking about with VA benefits after you listen to that course. Attorney's fees. Obviously, this is important to us attorneys, all right, in private practice. You cannot charge any fees for preparing claims until there's an initial denial. So when there's a denial and moving forward, that's when you can charge. But there's a caveat to this. That's for preparing the claims, the actual application, gathering the information. You can charge consultation fees for planning prior to preparing these claims. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind in the interplay between VA benefits and Medicaid planning on the consultation side. Now finally, I want to end with this tip of the day. One of the most rewarding aspects of representing these veterans is that they're heroes. If it wasn't for these veterans, we could not do what we do every single day. They ensure that our freedom rings loud and clear in this country. So to the extent we can get them what they're earned, and to the extent when they're in your conference room, you don't just focus on the numbers that we talked about. You talk about their experiences. You show the gratitude to these veterans that they so deserve. Many of them are going to be disabled. They gave up a limb. They dealt with horrendous stress so that we can go home every night safe and secure to our families. So your tip of the day is to honor these veterans like they've honored our country. Can't wait to see you around the NAILA meetings.